I'm super excited to talk about, your experience with that and everything. But to start things off, could you just tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up in Michigan and things like that, how you got into wrestling?
When I was 6, my friend, a childhood friend, he got me into it because he watched it. And I remember my babysitter, he used to always talk about like Stone Cold Steve Austin and a bunch of people from the Attitude Era.
Hmm.
So it's pretty much always been around me ever since I was young. And then when I finally started watching it by myself, I just fell in love with it. And I just never fell out of love with it, no matter what I
Yeah.
thought about it.
Uh-huh.
So,
But when you first got into it, like you yourself, like actually starting training and stuff, what was that like? What age did you start it at, and where did you train at? Things like that.
it was pretty crazy because I was 12 when I started training out of Pure Pro Wrestling.
Hmm.
And at that time, it was based in Flint still. But due to COVID, we had to move to my coach's barn. And yeah, it was crazy, but 6 years. And when I first started, I was shy, very shy kid. I was
Yeah.
not shell yet. I didn't know how to really talk to people or make friends. And that really
Mhm.
brought me out of that shell. And I just grew so much as a person. Probably, I don't know if it's because I started at a young age, but it
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, in that first time getting in a pro wrestling ring, what it was it different than you expected? Did it hurt a lot taking those like impacts with the ring? What was that first day like in the ring?
I couldn't even believe it. Just side of it, looking at it, that I would really start
Hmm.
practicing training. At first, he didn't have us taking bumps because we were still juniors. I didn't take bumps till later in my career. I was 15. So
Hmm.
when I started training with the adults, is when I started taking those bumps, and they were just as rough as I thought they would be. But your body definitely adapts to it over time. The more consistent
Hmm.
you are to it. So yeah,
Yeah, awesome. Because I love asking that question to wrestlers because obviously I've never been in one myself. So, but yeah, I love to hear about what you guys say about what it's like actually being in a wrestling ring. But what was your first show like in a crowd of people? What was that experience like?
like wrestling or just
Oh
sitting in.
yeah, wrestling, like your first show.
We were in a high school gym. I was very nervous. Had some of my family come out to the show, and I didn't even know I was gonna be wrestling until a few days before. And so we had to rush my gear, but we already had a good idea of when I was gonna start doing matches and stuff like that. And I remember when I was in the back, and they said that they were gonna call me last. I'm like, okay, and I'm just trying to get those feelings out. Very
Hmm.
still, very nervous kid at the time. And I still am. I still get nervous before every match. But they ended up calling me first. And I used to come out with this all white jacket and stuff. And I remember this
Hmm.
spot. So now I'm freaking out because it's I'm supposed to go last. Now I'm first. Now my gear's messing up.
Hmm.
And right before my music hit, I was able to get it undone. I walked out with just everyone staring at me. And I like flipped the switch just like that. Like all my fears went away. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't anxious. It just felt supernatural to me.
Hmm. And with independent wrestling companies, where do you guys practice these matches before you start the shows?
Like, where do we train at, or like where do we?
Like, uh, let's say you were going against someone one on one. Where do you guys practice your match together? Like practice what's gonna happen in the match, just kind of like, I guess, rehearse, if that makes sense.
I see what you're trying to say. Most of the time we won't even know until the day of. It just
Hmm.
matters. Like if I go to a different company, I probably won't know unless I've been there before and they'll tell me. But it just all comes down to the company. It doesn't really matter like the area you're at. You
Hmm.
can show regardless. But it's usually just the same day. You never know what you're gonna do.
Yeah, yeah. And going back to like your high school days, did you play any other sports or do any other sports other than wrestling?
Not in high school, but in middle school, I did cross country and track until COVID.
Hmm.
I just fell out of love with that.
Yeah, and how did what was the transition like from that to wrestling?
It was wrestling was way more physical right
Hmm.
before it, but it was way more physical.
Yeah, definitely. And I also love asking this question to all the wrestlers I interview is, do you have you learned anything from wrestling that can help you in real street fights? Like if you got in a real physical fight with someone, is there anything you've learned that could really help you?
A lot of it is self defense.
Hmm.
So try not to start fights, de-escalate them first, try to talk out of it, and like as a last decision thing, if you have to, just try to stop them. You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh. And sorry, I just kind of got a bunch of questions lined up, so sorry if I'm going like out of order, but anything like that. But I see you got to work with Rhino in one of your matches or something like that. But what was that experience like working with someone that was once in the WWE and things like that?
It was crazy. It was a 4-on-4 tag match.
Hmm.
Being in a match with him was cool. Like he's been to our shows at Pure Pro Wrestling before. I've seen him in the backstage. I've talked to him. I've done his seminars. But being in an actual match with him was crazy. Being able to just share a ring with him on an actual show.
Yeah.
I was kind of fanboying because I remember I had his action figure and everything.
Hmm.
It was definitely a very cool moment.
Yeah. And what is the training like? Like, is it, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. When you first started training in wrestling, was it much harder than you thought it would be? Was it like physically and mentally draining? Did it take a lot out of you? Did you just want to quit or how did you persevere through that?
It's different for everyone. What your drive is, if you're doing it for fun, if you're doing it for the future, like you will actually see a career doing it. For me, I want to do this long term and eventually make it to the WWE. So for me, it was a mental thing.
Hmm.
A lot of times I'd get knocked down and I'd be like, should I even get back up?
Hmm.
Always have that support from family and friends. And I'm like, I got to do it for them. And importantly, I got to do it for myself because I know I can and I shouldn't just give up.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of WWE, what things do you think you have to work on before you get a chance to be as good as some of those guys are?
It's definitely physical look.
Hmm.
I know I'm not there yet, but I will get there. Well, that's one of the things, just how you look in the ring, moving around, like how do you work with other people? Can you work well with everyone or just some people? Can you
Hmm.
get the basics down? That's very important. We go back to basics a lot in training just to make sure you got them down because they'll have an eye on everything that you do, if it's footwork or not. So a lot of things are pretty important.
Uh-huh, for sure. And speaking of certain people you can work with and things like that, um, has there ever been anyone that was just maybe really rude behind the scenes and kind of just their career ended just because they were maybe just they were hard to work with? Did you ever work with anyone like that that was hard to work with, rude, stuff like that?
I know that's happened like throughout the history of wrestling, but thankfully I've never encountered it.
Hmm.
Backstage that I've met across promotions have been nice and helpful, and I haven't seen a lot of cancer types of people.
Yeah, yeah. And if you don't want to discuss this, that's completely okay. But getting into like the salary aspect of independent wrestling, is there can independent wrestlers make a full-time job out of just doing little shows like you do, or do you have to get bigger like WWE before it can become your full-time job?
I feel like you don't have to make it to WWE to make your full time job,
Hmm.
but you definitely have to be putting the work in because you won't get paid just for shows. You have to make sure you're putting merch out there, helping other wrestlers. That'll make you money, like making gear.
Hmm.
It's just a lot of hard work. It's a grind, and you got to be very consistent if you want it to be full time.
Yeah, for sure. And uh have you worked with anyone else other than Rhino that has made it to AEW, Impact, WWE, anything like that?
I've worked with Jack Price, who's on TNA or Impact actually.
Hmm.
Rohit Raju, who's been on
Hmm.
Impact. Oh, trying to think. Mm, So far, that's it, I believe, but definitely there will be more.
Yeah, hopefully. What did those guys teach you that you definitely feel like has helped you a lot in your wrestling career so far?
Just things. It's they make things simpler to understand because they've been in those shoes before.
Hmm.
So being able to see like it from a veteran's perspective definitely helps out way more. In the ring, outside of the ring, it's just great having that around.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of wrestlers like them and Rhino and everything, I don't know if you're familiar with some people like Quincy Elliott. Rhino's one of them. They were all obviously once WWE wrestlers, but just all those big wrestlers as a whole. Would you have any idea how do people with that physique make it to the WWE? Because I just feel like when I watch how intense the tryouts are and everything like that, it's just like, how can these big people get through these tryouts with just like, I feel like you'd have to be in really, really good tip-top shape to be able to go through those tryouts. And then I see so many bigger guys in the WWE. Would you have any idea what plays a role with that?
Definitely, even if it isn't physical physique, they are in shape. Like Dusty Rhodes, he could go 60 minutes and be fine.
Hmm.
They work well in the ring. They sell tickets. They sell merch. It's not just like how they look in the ring, or look
Hmm.
cool. There's so many factors to it. So, like what was his name? Won the North American Championship. Leon Ruff, was it? From
Leon Ruffin, did you say?
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was able to make it and win a championship. Even if it was short lasted, he did it. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter about that. It's just how can you work in the ring, how can you work the crowd, and stuff like that. It's a lot of factors.
Yeah, for sure. Um, but yeah, Leon Ruffin, I remember, was only NXT North American champion, I think it was, for a short time, but then he got released a little bit after, I think it was. But um, going back to your independent wrestling, is there anyone that doubted you as a kid that now they look at you and are like, wow, he's achieved much more, and I shouldn't have doubted him before he became a professional wrestler?
No one's came to me or shown me that they doubted me, but I've definitely known people have doubted me.
Hmm.
And honestly, I don't care, like not,
Yeah.
but that's out of sight, out of mind. I'm just here doing what I love. If I get
Hmm.
support, I love it. If I get hated, then I just use that as more support. I have a goal, and I really do believe one day I will achieve it.
Yeah, for sure. And what's your workout routine like? Do you focus on certain things? What's your diet like? Things like that.
Calisthenics mostly is for my workout routine and diet. I have a clean diet. It's not set, but I cut out a lot of sugar, a lot of calories. But I do
Hmm.
get it sorted out because I just eat clean. I don't have like anything planned or scheduled. I just make sure to eat clean.
Yeah. And what are some things you're currently working on that things I should say things that you need to improve on before you get a chance at getting uh in bigger opportunities to wrestle for bigger companies? What are some things you have to work on?
Probably social media, putting myself out there for sure.
Hmm.
Icing. So far, I just have shirts
Yeah.
that I sell at the shows. But I'd say definitely advertising myself, especially in these days and age where
Hmm.
it is such a huge part of wrestling. So definitely just making my big name on social media.
Yeah, for sure. And what is traveling like? Do you travel all over the state? Have you traveled to different states? How often do you travel? Things like that.
We travel all over Michigan, pure pro wrestling. I've been to different companies though. One in Indiana, which is Midwest Pro, and then
Hmm.
Ohio, which was Fight World. That was my first time going out of state, and out of promotion too. and I remember name James Alexander.
Mhm.
He's the one that took me. Veteran. I see him as a mentor. He's also been on WWE, AEW, I think Impact. I'm not sure, but man, yeah, I go all over. I try to.
Yeah. Do you guys ever come anywhere? I don't know if you're familiar with I'll just start naming out places around me like Livonia, Brighton, Dearborn, Canton. Are you familiar with any of those places?
I think we've been to Dearborn.
Hmm.
Not sure. We do go all over Michigan, so it's hard to track.
Yeah, because I've been looking for a show around me, just a smaller independent show other than like WWE, obviously, but um hopefully I can see you in person because I'd love to meet you. But uh I forgot what I was gonna ask next. I'm sorry about that. But uh what's it like designing your gear and making your gear? Where do you get your gear, wrestling tights, things like that?
I got my shirts were made from a friend. Face Kicked Apparel. He runs Face Kicked Apparel, so he does a bunch of merch. He did this design, mass produced it for me, and now,
Hmm.
but he doesn't just do shirts. So I could ask him about some more merchandising. But my other stuff is just various websites, just a lot of hours of looking in what would look good compared to this and how would it look if it was compared to a different thing. So it's just a lot of web surfing and stuff for what I think would look great on me.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, I love that shirt design. It kind of reminds me of Wesley a little bit, if you know who that is. He's an NXT. But yeah, I love that shirt design. With independent wrestling, do you guys ever merge with like other companies, if that makes sense?
I don't think so. Like wrestlers can definitely go into other companies, but I don't think the companies of themselves have.
Hmm.
But that's just from my experience so far.
Yeah. And the reason I'm asking is just because do you guys have like uh with pure pro wrestling, do you have like a roster? Is there a roster of all you guys? A certain
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was asking just because I don't know how big the rosters are, but um with roster stuff, how are you always wrestling against someone different or how often are you wrestling with the same people, things like that? How big is your roster?
Just matters who's consistent, who keeps showing up. Usually it's the same group of people, but we'll definitely get new people. People will have to leave for a moment. They'll come back and we'll have more people. So I'd say it's pretty diverse.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we started at 6:55, so I'll probably wrap things up shortly, but with a few more questions, where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Hopefully 5 years from now, I have a contract somewhere, but
Mhm.
definitely see myself improved in the ring, outside of the ring, and physically. And I just hope to be just grow as much as I can in the next 5 years.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And what's some advice you have for younger people looking to get into pro wrestling?
Whether you see it just because you like it, you want to have fun, or you see doing it long term, make sure you have fun. You're gonna stress, but it's fine.
Hmm.
It's great for you mentally, physically. It gives you that drive to keep going, that motivation that sometimes you won't even have. But wrestling will get you going for sure.
Hmm.
So it's just, I say it's a great environment to be in most of the time.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I'm definitely looking to get into wrestling. I have to finish high school first before I get into it. But did you start after high school or during high school?
I started during 12th. I was 12, so it was before high school. I did it
Oh
after.
gosh. Yeah, that's young. Where'd you train at? Was pure pro wrestling, was it? Can you train that young? What was it like as a 12-year-old?
Oh, so we have a junior grapplers program, which goes as young as 6.
Hmm.
Surrounded by people my age, younger than me, older than me, but we were all just one big family. It was fun nonetheless.
Yeah, yeah. But I do have to wrap things up. So I was really looking forward to this interview. Thank you so much for joining me today. And yeah, really just thank you for your time. But sorry, I had one last question, but I can't think of it. But if I do, I'll message you on Instagram. But thank you so much.
Of course.
All right. You have a good rest of your day.
Yo, you too.